Sherri Stewart Berman is a licensed social worker and currently in training to become a certified public poetry therapist. Her poetry has appeared or is forthcoming in Earth's Daughters, Not Magazine, and One City, One Prompt.org. She lives in New York with her husband and their son. Let's welcome Sherri Stewart Berman. And I'm sorry it took me so long to find you.
This is my first time here at the Poetry Center, so thank you for inviting me. And it's the first time a poem of mine has appeared in the Paterson Literary Review. So thank you, Maria, for this opportunity. And incidentally, it's a poem that I did begin working on in a workshop taught by Maria and Laura Boss. I don't say. When my father first sees me in his hospital room, straight off the plane from New York, he groans and says, "Oh God, you're here too. Now I know I'm dying." I don't say, "No, Dad, you're not," or "It's going to be okay," or "Maybe you should rest." I don't say anything. I scan the wide shock of face, hair, his eyes like those of a child watching his mother reach and drown. And suddenly, I am that one, that stranger in a crowd, who at last spots a man she'd like to meet, just as he is leaving. Thank you.
Okay, and our next reader is Peggy Vassallo. And Peggy's poetry has appeared in numerous journals. She's a board member of the West Orange Arts Council and has been a judge for the local high school participation in a National Poetry Out Loud contest. She also was assistant editor of the poetry journal Offline. Let's welcome Peggy Vassallo.
Thank you. I just want to say real quick, one of the first workshops I attended was with Maria, and the advice you gave everyone was, when you write, go to the cave, dig deep, and I'm sure everybody does that, and I still hear that in my head when I'm writing, so otherwise, what's the point? So thank you for the advice. My poem is called How It Feels. It is the yellow-green crayon at the back of the box, sharp and new. No frayed paper peeling at the edges, not the turquoise blue. There are no wrinkles, no rounded top, no faded letters in the middle. It is tall and stays tall and stands the same way through open and closed lids. That is how it feels not to be touched. It is dry ground a bird has pecked through, scratched and blown over. Not the soft soil before spring planting, thick and black. It is unsettled, left to sun, abandoned by weeds. It is drought. It is the sky before a blizzard. It is not gray or rainy. It is heavy and white. It is wide and waiting for falling. It is lines. It is looking for arcs. It is waiting for circles. That's how it feels. I thought you should know. Thank you.
I wonder if Valerie Weidman is here from Highland Park? No, okay. I didn't want to skip you if you were here. And our last reader is Sherri Yoder, and Sherri is a professor of English at Felician College in Lodi, where she teaches composition, creative writing, and literature. She grew up in Paterson and earned all her degrees from Rutgers University. Her husband, George, is also a poet, and her sister, Felicia and Margaret, are her sisters, Felicia and Margaret, are her inspiration. And I believe at least one of them is here today. Okay, let's welcome Sherri Yoder.
Thank you very much, Maria. I'm wondering how many people here today are spouses of poets. Okay, this poem is for you. It's called Art. I wouldn't want to live with a poet, with them always rushing to grab a pen and paper every time you say something or make them mad. They get that distant look and lick their lips, eager to consume you, chew you up into the required syllables for some poem. And sometimes they don't tell it right because what happened doesn't fit into their lines and they don't even care. Reality like a piece of fabric to them that they don't mind cutting. And then they want to read it to you when all you want to do is watch TV or check your email or maybe search for an old TV clip on YouTube like The Prisoner or 24 or something. And you ask, how long is it? Or say, not now, and by damn. Then they go and write a poem about that. And believe me, you don't look good when a poet goes and writes about how you don't want to listen to their poetry. Just imagine old Sylvia Plath in there, hacking at the table with an axe and writing about you in blood.
Now, because sometimes I don't recognize somebody, did I leave anybody out? Did I? Oh, Frank, I'm so sorry, honey. Frank Nicoletti's going to read, but now I don't have the bio in my hand. But Frank, let's just say Frank Nicoletti is a wonderful supporter of poets and a wonderful writer of poetry. Is he in there?
Oh, he's in here. Yeah. There he is.
Okay. His work appears in several magazines, anthologies, and journals. Salutes in his poem, The Word Made Flesh, the courageous girls and boys, women and men who step up and speak out in plain words of poetry or their own against the travesties of otherwise glorious, gracious lady, that holy Mother Church. Thank you, Frank.
I've always been tucked safely in the middle of the alphabet. And reading first or last makes me feel entirely self-conscious. I was raised to be a rather shy fellow. This is The Word Made Flesh. And Maria, I salute you and your team for such a fine book. I had to bring the large print edition. So I can see the words. Good afternoon, everyone. The Word Made Flesh. That pale priest who came to the door, he of the sacerdotal shuffle we kids came to call him and it. That first of one is too many in the broken, unbroken line of St. Peter, whom bishops reassigned to our parish since I or any of my classmates had been baptized, exuded heavy-scented lilac, so unlike my father's smell that miraculously lingers even now. That woodsy and polished tanned leather, all Old Spice and holster. The distinguishing aura also of his fellow officers, who for months now had been visiting him, joking with him over the sweet benefits that the disability of a bullet-splintered spine guaranteed. Their never off-duty presence fending off for a little while the terror my mom and I brought those long nights to our beds. That priest, who managed between extreme unction and masses for the dead to come thrice daily to our school, promptly at recess and at lunch and at close of day during the long spring of '59, sat, his pompadour and smooth forehead dappled by the branches of the larch tree come too early into bloom. The branches of that larch tree bobbing like the trunks, the feathered colts of a tree. That priest, his surplice spotless, spread upon his lap, the vertical blue and horizontal pink cross sewn upon the linen of his pigeon chest. The skin of that priest's long fingers and the alabaster crescents of his manicured nails were more soapy clean than even those of the chaste sisters. Come that holy Thursday at our front door, his cloaked figure loomed, and I winced in its shadow at the recollection of his hypnotic script, "Suffer the little children to come unto me." A refrain darker for my still unsophisticated sense of irony. "Your father up and about or downtown for the treatment?" he asked. My altar boy's hand tightened on the knob, my knee hardened against the half-open door, while his hands fumbled over one another beneath his robes. I lied. "Setting up the ping-pong table in the basement, busy now." Boy, did I feel guilty, lying to a man of the cloth. That surely would condemn me to double hell. His face a silhouette in the confessional mode, his chin downcast, he squinted and humbled me. "Mendacious youth, we shall talk come your turn in the sacristy on Sunday." And he left. And that was that. And it still is. The fear. And every time my own son leaps to the front door, whether I am half asleep beneath the newspaper or idly doing chores in the cellar, I spring up, because no 10-year-old should greet a strange man who claims to come looking for his dad, nor have to learn the meaning of mendacious, the shame, not just the dictionary definition of the word. Thank you.
I thank you all for being here. Let's give another round of applause for an amazing reading. Hearing such wonderful poems for me makes every bit of work I've ever done worth it. This was an exceptionally fine reading, and I've been to readings for magazines sometimes where you want to shoot yourself by the end. This was not one of those. Every poem had something to offer us. Every poet had something to offer us that was worth taking home with us. So thank you all for being wonderful writers. Dyanne Quarry, does she want to read in the open reading? Yes, she does. Okay. Dyanne, come on up.
In plain sight. We bury so much of the magic of life, the delicate look in a child's eyes, beseeching us, seeking kindness, gentleness, the outstretched hand wanting to touch. Life elsewhere is less our concern. Rather, the ruins of history and the stories the stones tell intrigue us, pull us close. We bring ourselves to lands where we would not choose to live, carry camera gear worth more than those of that land earn in a year or a lifetime. I cannot unsee two boys, the clean, smiling child inserting himself into photos, the camera holders shifting to rid him from their sight, the filthy one, eyes covered with flies, begging, then slapped in the head by a vendor nearly as filthy. I cannot unsee these little boys. I cannot unsee two men, both beggars, one young and beautiful-faced, clad in gray suit, white shirt, smiling up at the Americans, only one looking back, seeing his lack of legs, his body sitting flat on the pavement. The other man dirty, toothless, with vulture eyes, clawed hands stretched, the voice crying for baksheesh, his one leg spread out in front of him. I cannot unsee these two men. We bury the delicate magic and sacredness of life of some, and these I cannot unsee, but I did see, and I do remember.
Eileen Van Hook.
The Weaver. My father's hands pitched his way to high school fame and my mother's attention. My father's hands took my mother's hands in marriage. And despite reservations about his return from war, my father's hands carried a wounded comrade under fire to safety and a future. My father's hands wove cloth and dreams until machines rendered him obsolete. My father's hands supported our family as a security guard, checking locks and IDs while wondering about his own. My father's hands blistered from digging graves to dress our hands in lace-trimmed gloves and baseball mitts. My father's hands directed traffic at the mall, producing a magical Christmas at home. My father's hands finessed fly rods with the grace of an artist, dazzling rainbow trout with dancing flies. My father's hands tickled his grandchildren till they cried and were warned not to sit near him. My father's hands raised 5 children, scores of animals, and for a time too many drinks to his lips. My father's hands, trembling with Alzheimer's, picked at his clothing as though trying to unravel the flawed fabric of his life.
Deborah Garish.
Okay. This is called Dodge Poetry Festival Glimpses. Thrown out of poetry heaven, 6 p.m. on a Sunday in October, the pearl gate of NJ Pack padlocked, bright lights diminish into darkness. Reflections of posters of Gillan, Collins, and Howe in the window glass of the Cathedral of Arts. Empty book tables, volumes of luminaries sold out. I dig my feet into the silences. Angels abandon their posts, drift through parking lots away from the brick city, slow to arrive home. I dig my feet into the rich soil of giving voices, mask and craft, poetry and jazz, song and silences. I listen for God's singers on YouTube, dig my feet into the working life. I love this earth with its pastries and plenitudes. As I lift my eyes, I dig my feet into the kingdom of poetry where the tarmac turns to peacock feathers and the heartstones to pearl. Thank you.
Terry Moss.
Thank you. Anybody else, I would feel slighted, but Maria Gillan has done more for me as a poet than anybody could have. So she started me on this road maybe 16, 17 years ago, and I'm happy to be here. So, thank you.
More than 16 or 17, I hate to say it, but more than 16 or 17 years ago.
I fudged a bit. Now, I don't know if you were here earlier, and I read a poem entitled To Be, and then this issue 35, which is free now. Also, I was pleased to be published at least in 10 or 12 of these, so I'm just honored. This is a prequel to the To Be, right? My husband and I are married 55 years, and this poem is called The Last College Dance. You, standing tall next to me at the Biltmore, with your clear blue Irish eyes and jet hair, in black tuxedo and black bow tie, sharp white shirt at collar and linked cuffs. At the senior ball, I twinkled by your side, with my shining brown Italian eyes, rhinestone gypsy earrings and necklace, ballerina slippers, gown of light blue satin and tulle. I still feel your strong arm circling my waist, your hand on my shoulder searing bare skin. I see your name in my dance card, inscribed with a short white pencil hanging from green tassel. You said I could see straight into you, but I would be too good and sweet. I often wonder what would have been if you had not known more than I did. After your attention wandered to a different girl, the pots and pans I got with green stamps to use on our stove held another man's meals, my entire heart and hope chest, his treasure.
Okay, Pat Hart, agree?
It's a great day. It's a great day. I'll read one that was in the 2012 Allen Ginsberg Poetry Awards for honorable mention. And it's called Anita Recites. And Anita was a friend of mine. And she was about this high. And she was so annoying in so many ways. She was a little older. She was a little older than I was. But I find as time goes by, I'm getting more and more like her. But I loved Anita. I still do. Anita recites. Toward the end, Anita recited endlessly stories from her youth, how her mother made ricotta cheese and mozzarella, rolled her own pasta, bought olive oil from Italy. The gravy stayed on the stove overnight, and huge pans of lasagna and meatballs were served on their long wooden table. Her mother developed a hernia, always wore a girdle. On rainy days, she lay in her four-poster bed on her side, holding her stomach, crying with pain. She would never go to a hospital, for she would surely die there. But on a Tuesday night, an ambulance brought her to Mercy, where she passed away. Anita stayed up all night, as if to avoid the angel of death. She said he only came then. I did not contradict her, for I know about spirits and visitations. She collapsed one evening, spent 3 days on her living room floor until a friend came and called 911. She fell into a coma, was sent to Riverview by the Delaware, where she passed quietly in the night. Her body old and ravaged, she was buried in a white dress with a veil, for Anita was a virtuous woman, always complaining, but a good cook and very kind.
Napoleon Zinkovic.
Where'd everybody go? My name is Napoleon Nikolai Zivkovich, or Zivkovic. I'm at the end. And very briefly, I have an announcement. An associate of mine, Jim Jarmusch, is a filmmaker. He's going to be at the Anthology Film Archives on Tuesday, November 18th. There is a brand new documentary of William S. Burroughs, and he's going to be at the screening. So I'm definitely going to be there. Other news. This is recent. It's from 3 years ago. It's a biography of Nile Rodgers of Chic. And I just like the quote here. It's the prologue's called The Theory of Relativity, and it's a very brief, anonymous, unknown quote. Life isn't about surviving the storm. It's about learning how to dance in the rain. That's it. Now, I'm going to read, ladies first, Annette Krizinich, who is not here, and this is a poem on page 161 of the brand new literary review. It's called Stupid. "You're so stupid," Dad said, when I told him I couldn't find the wrench he wanted in the garage. I was in middle school then. When I was in college, I asked him what the Scotland Yard was, and he called me stupid, even though I never read British mysteries. He grew up poor, never went to college. He worked at the Jefferson Assembly Plant in Detroit, drove 30 miles each way from our suburban house, had to get up at 5 a.m. He loved Shakespeare and Thoreau, listened to classical music all day as he welded K-cars. Once his foreman had told him he wasn't allowed to listen to the radio for safety reasons. He hid the earpieces under his heavy earmuffs so nobody could see them. He knew all the composers and the pieces they wrote. He knew how to invest money. I could never be as smart as he was. I didn't even like classical music. You're so stupid. The words still sound in my ears when I miss a turn or a deadline. You're so stupid when I realize I'm 41 with no secure future. Now he tells me he didn't mean it. He called me stupid the way he and his friends said it to each other in downtown Detroit. Kids playing catch in the street. I don't know how to forgive him, but I'm trying. Yesterday he told me he was always proud of me. I wish back then I had known.
Elisa Gordon.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for this lovely day. I had the pleasure to read here for the water-themed journal that came out earlier this year. That was an honor for me. Buchla Park. The sensory garden was my favorite. You could stroll narrow paths where every manner of scent could be had just by rolling a leaf between thumb and forefinger. The shapes of familiar herbs produced unexpected essence, mint, cinnamon, citrus. It was the lamb's ear that did me in. Long, silvery, and curved to a point, like the old farmers use, downy on my fingertips. More than 20 years later, when I drove the hills of rural England, saw the sheep on hillsides framed by heather, lambs kicked up their heels as they ran towards their mothers. How I longed to run, arms outstretched like a child, just to see how they compared. Brand new ear and wondrous leaf.
Rochelle.
Waking and knowing. Purple, orange, yellow swirl around me. My gone cat running fallow fields. Fast, faster, fastest, chased by rainbows. In a red well, I carry a baby, my co-worker's boy, over the darkness into astral flight, floating life to life, wearing natty wigs, throw rugs of clouds under their feet. Both my grandmother sit and watch, holding up nines. I'm waved in, landing on sheets, back from somewhere my heart knows of the pitfalls and rich soils.
Jim Alric.
I brought what I call a post-Halloween poem. I wrote this actually last year, and it was too late to read it in December, so I'm bringing it back here. Morning after Halloween, MOURNING. Carcasses of pumpkins strewn on the streets, hollow shells like human skulls, incomplete. Memories of celebrations and feasts, void of meaning yet consumed by defeat. Life of joy and delusion all too fleet. Sense of failure as well as disbelief, haunted by regret and bittersweet grief.